Hi there, it's Michael for The Adventures of Uber Dad. I'm sorry, it's been a little while since I made my last post. One of the advantages of driving Uber is that it's completely flexible, and my other job got really busy for a little while, so there were a couple of weeks there where I didn't drive at all during the week, or I drove once or twice. And I didn't have any time to make any videos and update or proceed with our lessons, so I apologize. We're now moving on to part 10, and we're going to be covering surge pricing and strategies of dealing with it. Now, one thing before I move on to that, I want to say in regards to the last one, we talked about cancellations and how to deal with that. One of the things that happened since I recorded that video was that I had a passenger who requested me and just never came down to the car. I waited several minutes, sent up a ping, they said I'm coming right down, waited several more minutes, they never came down, waited several more minutes, I made a call, they didn't pick up, and I left. Now, that's fine because I was over Uber's cancellation limit, and so I was given the half the charge fee that was given to the rider. But one of the things to know is that the rider isn't left without cause. They were naturally upset, and even though it was their fault and they were taking far too long to be able to join the ride, they were still able to post an issue, which shows up on my account. And issues are things like professionalism or blah, 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 and they go along with ratings. So it's one of these things that's very hard to clear. You can talk to Uber about it directly. And in my case, my rating is like a 4.96 or something pretty high. So, I can get by on that alone. But it is disturbing to have an issue reported with your account. And I'm not even sure if that's visible to the riders or not, but it is something to consider. So it's better to wait a little bit of extra time and lose a little bit of money to make sure that you've done everything you can possibly do to get those people into the car. But sometimes you just simply have to cut bait. I've heard other strategies where riders recommend that you basically force the other riders to cancel. I've tried that since a couple of times where you basically say, I have to leave, and then you drive away, and if you're far enough away and you don't want to pick up another rider, you just drive over from the location. But that doesn't necessarily always work either, and some guy just waited the 10 minutes that I was driving towards downtown and never canceled, so I ultimately had to cancel too. I haven't had an issue with somebody reporting an issue since, but it is something to consider. Okay, surge pricing. This is going to be a part 1 and part 2 because it is a larger thing. We talked about it in one of the earlier episodes, how surge pricing works. Essentially, there's a heat map overlay of the map as you're driving. You can see areas that are greater concentrations of riders who need Uber. Those areas will be in red, and that will go all the way down through orange and yellow down to a normal map color. If you happen to be in one of those areas and you're requested by a rider and you pick them up, that red or orange or yellow is going to signify a multiplier, and you can look up to the upper right hand corner and hit the surge price symbol. That'll tell you what the magnification is going to be. Those situations are great when you get them. Sometimes the multipliers can go as high as 2.5, 3. I've even seen it at super busy times 5, and like we talked about before, New Year's Eve I heard multipliers as high as 8 or 9. So the temptation is to say, well, I'm just going to go ahead and follow the surge pricing. Now, there's certain situations where you're downtown during concerts or in a very busy area during a very busy hour that's probably reasonable. But I have had enough opportunities here in Los Angeles, which is a very sprawling metropolis, to try and chase surge pricing. And in my opinion, I don't think that's the best strategy. The reason being that it updates every 30 seconds and all other Uber drivers are watching the same thing that you're watching. The reason that they do this is to incentivize drivers to be where they need them to be. So naturally, when they see an area with high surge pricing, everybody's going to head to that area. And what oftentimes happens is in the course of driving to that area, other drivers arrive in that area as well, and the surge pricing goes away and it pops up in an area that you just were. So you can effectively be chasing your tail all over the place. And then sometimes even when you're lucky enough to get the surge pricing at the higher rate, that ride can take you well outside the confines of your normal driving area. You can end up out in some sort of urban or rural area, and that ends up putting you back, far enough away from the surge pricing that it doesn't really matter anyway. So in my limited driving experience, although I've been doing this for several months now, I find that if you just simply drive at the right hours in those general surge price areas, that you're going to end up balancing out to about the same anyway. If there's a particularly large show or concert or venue, maybe sporting event or something like that, that you know is going to be very busy, you can plan on being at that area at that particular time. But oftentimes those areas can be very chaotic too, to go ahead and try and get to your rider. So you can spend a good deal of time just simply trying to locate where your person is. I've had many nights where I'm dealing with a club situation in Hollywood, and everybody's Ubering at the same time because everyone's spilling out of the club, and you end up spending a considerable amount of time just trying to find your riders, mixed in with everybody else, and everybody approaches your car. So sometimes the surge pricing isn't really worth the headache. I find that you're going to end up in enough of these situations anyway if you just simply drive during the right hours and the right time. And then if you chase them, or you try and disable your app to get back to the surge areas, and then come back online when you're in the surge areas, that can be problematic too, where you're going to be missing rides that you could have gotten along the way, and oftentimes you end up in the area where the surge pricing was and not where it is now. So my recommendation to you would be, go ahead and just take the rides as they come. Every once in a while, when you end up in like a very far outlying area, it might pay to go ahead and go offline and return back to a busier area. But oftentimes when I've left myself, I've ended up down, south of Los Angeles. Here we have Orange County and Disneyland. I found myself down in Anaheim, and I've done quite well for the night just driving around locally. Once one rider had me take them all the way down there, and I was stuck in the area, and thank God for things like Waze and Google Maps that you can find your way around areas that you've never been before. But I've done actually quite well just in staying in the area where I am. But it does mean at the end of the night you're going to have a drive to get back to where you come from, particularly if you live in the area that you normally drive. So that's just something to consider. Actually, that's probably it for surge pricing. There's not much more to say about it. If you want to check out my earlier podcast, that will explain more about how it actually works. But in terms of strategies of driving with it, I think that's probably all you'll need to know. In my next podcast, I'm going to talk a little bit more about other financial incentives, as there have been some of late that Uber and Lyft have been using to entice people to drive. So I'm going to go into a little more depth about that and various programs that they have, that they delve out weekly and sometimes daily, to get you to drive during certain hours that can increase your pay. In the meantime, if you have any questions, as always, go ahead and write to me at uberdad.la@gmail.com, or you can leave comments below this video or one of the others, and I'll do my best to respond to them. Likewise, if you're going to be signing up for Uber for the first time, one way to make money always is through a referral code. You can find mine on this website. There's a link to it that has a page for what my referral code is. And if you sign up and I sign up, once you've completed a certain number of drives, you get a cash payment, I get a cash payment. That is a way to make money in Uber or Lyft or these other rideshare things. So it's a good thing to do, and hopefully karma is a good thing and it goes around, and it can be quite helpful in supplementing your income. Okay, so all the best, and I will talk to you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.